joining you, did your ex-husband ever make any effort to transfer legal custody to you?
We discussed it, but he never did actually sign anything. No, sir.
Okay. And without legal custody, how do you get Timothy into school?
You can't.
And without legal custody, how do you get medical treatment for Timothy?
You can't.
Did your husband at least send his, I assume he had medical insurance for Timothy. Did he send that?
He did not send me. I requested his medical card, his insurance card, and he never sent it to me.
Now, you heard the testimony that Timothy saw the doctor in 2019. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
That was a year before you received him?
2 years before I received him.
2 years before. So the prior 2 years before you received him, as far as you know, based on what you heard here, your ex-husband never took him to the doctor?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
How do you know if he had medical insurance for this young man?
He told me he did.
Okay. But he never sent it to you?
No, sir.
Okay. What was your financial situation once Timothy arrived and your husband had a stroke?
After the stroke, we
Yes.
lost my husband's income, and it was paycheck to pay, not even paycheck to paycheck. Almost everything was paid late. I was struggling. I asked Paul for help with groceries sometimes because we were struggling.
Okay. And Paul was working full-time?
He was working part-time.
He's working at Applebee's?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he's working part-time, and so were you receiving any child support?
No,
So the entire financial burden was on you.
correct.
Could you have afforded daycare for any of your children?
Absolutely not, no.
And could you have afforded any extra expenses other than the ones that you were providing for?
No,
What type of expenses were you able to provide for this family?
just basic living expenses.
Rent,
Yes, sir.
utilities,
Yes, sir.
food?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that leads to the next question I have for you. You had monitors and cameras in your home, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the impression from the testimony I heard is that it was for the sole purpose of ensuring that Timothy could not get the food. Is that accurate?
No.
Why did you have all those monitors and cameras in your home?
When Timothy came to live with us, his stepmother informed me that they'd had motion sensors. They weren't as tech savvy as I was. I worked in tech before law school. I worked in tech support for several years. But they had motion sensors and she told me that she didn't sleep at night. She only slept when he was at school because he was into everything. And so because my younger child, he used to, when he was about 2, he would take all his clothes off. So we started putting a camera in his room. And then once we moved to the Marshall Road location, it was bi-level. My husband was born with a disability. My husband was wheelchair bound. So we had an extra wheelchair that we kept on the upper level. That's where the master bedroom was. But that way, if G was down in his bedroom, my husband could talk to him through the camera and have him come up. It was much easier. My husband could crawl down the steps before the stroke, but we didn't want him to have to crawl up and down those steps.
Okay. And again, let's go back to the issue of food. Was food the only reason why you felt you had to monitor Timothy, or were there other issues?
There were plenty of issues, sir.
So, well, first of all, what we've heard some testimony as to Timothy's special needs. What were his special needs?
He was on the autism spectrum, but he was completely verbal, and he was grade level in school. He was not behind in school at all. He was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He was diagnosed as bipolar and sensory processing disorder. I heard Paul mention physical disability. He didn't have any. Now, Timothy, when he first got there, said he had a physical disability, and I asked his stepmom about it to make sure, and she said no, he was not coordinated at all. The first summer that he lived with us, my youngest was playing baseball, and Timothy actually mentioned, because we had planned to put him in public high school, I'm going to try out for the baseball team. And I didn't say anything to him, but I remember thinking, sorry, sweetie, there's no way. You don't have the coordination for that.
All right. And he liked to take, well, you tell me, did he like to take things apart?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Can you give some examples?
He took batteries apart. He took toys apart. My youngest son's toys. If he could get a hold of anything from Paul's room, he would take, like, mostly it was Legos. Paul still had Legos. He at one point messed with our water heater.
What do you mean?
He actually turned the gas off to the water heater. He knocked out the pilot light and then turned the gas off as well at different points.
Okay. Did you have any concerns as to whether or not his predilections, his desire to get into things might be a safety hazard for either him or somebody else in the home?
I was extremely concerned about that. Yes, sir.
So it was your desire was it just your desire to monitor Timothy, or did you also have a younger child in the home that you wanted to monitor?
We had both.
Okay. Who did you want to monitor? One or the other, or both?
Both.
Okay. All right. So you set up these video and audio cameras, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And alarms on the doors?
Those didn't get installed until about 3 weeks before he passed away.
Okay. And motion sensors?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He got around the motion sensors multiple times.
Were you able to stay home and personally monitor your children?
No, I had to work full time.
Okay. How were you able to get Timothy into school?
No, we were not. We tried to enroll him in Mona Shores High School, and Mona Shores told me that my ex, I guess Timothy had damaged a Chromebook in Oklahoma, and because my ex owed money on that, they would not send his records up to us. So we were not able to enroll him. So I found online homeschool curriculum that I had to monitor, but I enrolled him in that.
Let me make sure I understand. Was it your original intention to put Timothy into public schools?
Yes, sir. We started the process. I filled out the paperwork. Because of my work schedule, I couldn't actually take paperwork to Mona Shores. My husband did that. Adam did that. But yes, we did try to get him enrolled.
Okay. And the youngest child, G, was he in public schools?
No, he was homeschooled.
What about Paul? Do you know if he was homeschooled, or when he got to you, was he still in school?
No, he had graduated high school.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, you mentioned that you weren't able to stay at home and care for your children at home, in the home, as a stay-home parent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what type of? I assume you're out working.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Explain to the jury the work that you did during the period of time that Timothy arrived in your home.
When he first arrived, I was still studying for the bar exam. So my husband was working full time. And I was just doing, I trained dogs on the side, everything from basic obedience up through different types of service dogs for other people. And so I had a couple of dog training clients, but mostly I was studying for the bar exam. I also was an intern here in this courthouse.
That pay a lot of money?
Oh, it was not paid at all, sir.
Okay.
But it was the week of the bar exam. My judge that I worked for here as a law clerk informed me of this position that was open in Nuevo County, and she knew that the judge referred me, and that's when I did the interview, and I started work. I think it was 2 days after I completed the bar exam.
Okay. Was that a paid position?
Yes, it was.
Was it lucrative enough where you didn't have to do any other work?
Well, with my husband's income, it was.
Okay. But your husband's income stopped when he got sick?
When he had the stroke, yes.
Okay. So at that point, was it enough income to provide for you and your family?
No.
Were you receiving any other outside income?
My older brother lives in the home that I still own in Oklahoma, and he paid rent to us.
Okay.
But it wasn't a lot. That went towards our house rent.
Child support?
No. My ex, one of the siblings was forgotten yesterday. There's 5 total. We talked about the 4 boys. I also have a daughter. She is now 19, but she stayed down with her dad.
Okay.
So we each had one, so there was no child support. And because of child support on the other 4 kids, I actually was still paying my ex child support. It was still being deducted from my check.
Okay. So you had that's another deduction from your income?
$1,000 a month, yes, sir.
Okay. So, were you also doing tutoring when you went to the judge who was paying you? Were you still tutoring or doing any other outside work?
Not at that. I was doing the dog training.
Okay. Let me ask you this. What time in the morning did you leave to go to work?
I usually left the house about 6:30,
And what time on an average were you getting home?
about 6 o'clock.
Okay, so we're talking about 12 hours away from the home.
Yes, sir.
Okay, those monitors, the video cameras in your home, you were able to, to view them while at work?
From my phone, occasionally, yes, sir.
Okay. And but you were still working.
Yes, sir. I didn't view them at all until after the stroke. I mean, because my husband was there, or we had arrangements where my husband was off certain days of the week. Paul was off one day, specifically one day a week, so he took care of Gabriel and Timothy. And then the other 2 days that I needed care for Gabriel when my husband was working, he actually went to my in-laws' house down in West Olive.
May I approach the witness for just a moment, John? You may. Let's see. You have 3 children at home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my understanding is you faced other challenges personally in terms of your own personal health.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. For instance, let's run down the list. You had insomnia.
Severe insomnia caused by attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Okay. And for those folks who get a great night's sleep every night, don't understand what insomnia does to your ability to function, can you explain to them what impact chronic insomnia has on a person?
It limits your ability to think clearly. Your energy level is greatly reduced. Takes a lot longer to process things. You forget things easier. It was much harder to function with so little sleep.
Okay. And you talked about your other personal disorders. Were you seeking medications for those?
I was for, I have severe attention deficit hyperactivity disorder combined type. I also have sensory processing disorder and OCD. And then after my husband's stroke, as a result of my husband's stroke, because I viewed him, I wasn't in the room when he had the stroke, but I was there right afterwards. And so I developed post-traumatic stress disorder with disassociation from that. The only medication that I was on was for the ADHD.
Okay. And you had the service dogs in your presence too.
I had one service dog for me, yes,
Okay.
sir.
What sorts of interventions were available for Timothy's disorders?
When he came to us, he was on medication. They gave us a whole large gallon-sized Ziploc bag of medications for him. I could not refill them because I could not get him to the doctor. We were going to try to adjust his medication because when he came to live with us, when he took his medicine, he was a zombie. It was just horrific. And when Paul came to live with us, because Paul had only been there a year when Timothy moved up, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was on the same big bag of medication, and there were serious concerns that they just, instead of handling, especially my ex, he wanted to medicate them. But I never got that option because I couldn't take him to the doctor.
Okay. All right. There's been some allegations, there's been some implications, put it that way, that you tried to keep people from seeing Timothy, that you tried to keep him away from public view, that he didn't go to school, he didn't go to the doctor, etc. That he went outside, he was in the backyard. You remember that testimony?
Yes, sir.
If someone's outside in your backyard, are there trees or fences or other obstacles to keep the neighbors from looking over there and seeing who's out in your yard? No,
there was a clearing before. There was woods at the back of the lot, but there was a clearing, and at least the neighbors on each side, there were pretty sizable windows on the back of their homes. They weren't I think the next door was a 2-level, but the one on one side was just a single level. It may have had a basement, I don't know. But there was big windows, and they could see into our backyard easily.
Okay. Was it ever your intention to keep people from seeing Timothy?
No, my mother-in-law saw him. They do rental home inspections, I guess the city of Norton Shores.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if it was late April or early May of 2022, but it was in that neighborhood. And so we'd had the inspection that day, and my mother-in-law happened to stop by that day. And I invited her in. We sat and talked, and Timothy wanted to come say hi. So he came up and said hi to her.
Now you're a Muskegon County transplant, correct?
Yes, I'm not from around here.
So and I'm assuming that your your direct biological family, there's not a lot of them in this county?
There's no, I don't have, other than my children, I don't have any biological family here.
Okay. How far away are they?
My older brother is in Oklahoma City. And then I have two sisters that I have not talked to in over 20 years, and they live in Alabama, where I'm from.
Okay. So how often do those folks, your bio family, stop by and to see how sister's doing?
The last time I saw my older brother was when we went down to North Carolina for my oldest son's wedding in October of 2021. And then my brother and sister-in-law drove over from Oklahoma for the wedding as well. We FaceTimed a lot. We watched football games on FaceTime, but I didn't get to see them after we moved up here.
Okay. Do you have a lot of friends in the area that will come by, will stop by on, maybe on, does it happen to be in the area, that sort of thing, that will come by and visit your home?
Most of my friends were from work, and they actually, because I worked in Newaygo County, they lived in Newaygo or Oceana County, or even further. I don't know. I'm not from here. I don't know what county is next to Newaygo east. But I know at least one person from work lived in, I think it's Big Rapids.
Yes.
So no, they didn't stop by because they were too far away.
Did you have a lot of time for social interactions at your home?
No, not at all.
And how about Paul? Did he have friends that he'd bring by, or?
No, he talked about people at work, but he never asked to bring anybody over.
Was he ever given any instructions? You can't have people in this house?
Absolutely not.
And what about the youngest child, G? Did he have any friends for sleepovers or anything like that?
We didn't have any friends over for it. No. He played baseball. Because of me not being able to get out, he didn't get out a lot. I mean, I wish I could have gotten him out more. That's why we put him in baseball, so he could get around other kids more. I had been looking into homeschool co-ops, but with my schedule, I just couldn't do that.
Okay. What would you say was more impactful in terms of your, get Timothy out of the house? Was it your desire he not get out of the house, or your work requirements?
It was work requirements and his choice. There was, I want to say it was April. The weather was halfway decent. I guess people here there was kids down the street. There was teenagers playing basketball when I came home from the grocery store one weekend. And I stopped and rolled my window down and said, hey, I've got a 15-year-old at home. Can he come play with y'all? Even though I knew he wasn't coordinated, I thought he would enjoy it. And they said, yeah, sure, absolutely. And he did not want to go play.
Okay. Did he ever request to go play and you denied him?
No, he never did. Actually, Paul, we had mom and dad, my in-laws, got Timothy a bike for his 15th birthday. And Paul and we were on a cul-de-sac. And Paul had tried to teach him to ride the bike.
Okay.
I know they had a few sessions. I don't know how many.
Okay. So on those occasions, he'd be outside.
Oh yeah, he was out in front of the house in the cul-de-sac.
All right. Okay. Let's talk about some of the things that have come up in this case. There were there are leg irons discovered in your home. Were you aware of those?
I was aware that Paul had them. You actually could look on my Amazon. Paul had the option to do payment on the Amazon as well as mine. And Paul had actually ordered those under his account.
Okay. You did not order the leg irons?
I did not, no.
Did you ever use them?
No, sir. No, I never instructed.
Let's be in specific. Did you ever use them with Timothy?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever notice any bruising on Timothy's wrists or legs that might be attributable to the use of leg irons?
No, sir. I never saw anything like that.
You heard Paul talk about plastic ties. What was that about?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
I don't know why we would order. I mean, I saw the ties. I don't remember ordering them. I don't know what happened there.
You're going to say, I don't remember a lot, aren't you?
Unfortunately, yes, because of the dissociation.
Okay. Explain to the jury what that means.
Well, I guess there's different forms. Somebody told me this. I did not find out about the PTSD and the disassociation until about 7 months after my husband's stroke, even though it had been going on since the stroke.
I need to place an objection on the record, and I think we're going to have to excuse the jury. Okay. The jury.
We'll have to excuse you back to the jury room. may be seated. Record reflect the jury is now in the jury room secure. Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
Well, first and foremost, Your Honor, she's not qualified to testify about what disassociation means and what disassociation, what affects disassociation. Anything she knows about that presumably would have been told her by a doctor. We've already been down the road. Mr. Johnson's, to my knowledge, has tried multiple doctors that would be able to provide a diagnosis of Ms. Vander Ark to indicate that she has, some type of disassociation or some type of mental disorder which would have contributed to this offense, and has not done so. That's an insanity defense. We covered that extensively. Mr. Johnson, I think, valiantly tried to get that and has been unable to provide any information to me from any medical doctor who's examined Ms. Vander Ark that she suffers from any of these diagnoses. So I'm objecting to this entire line of questioning about disassociation, about why she can't remember certain things. If she wants to say she just can't remember, I guess she can just say she can't remember, but she doesn't get to use the excuse that this is disassociation. Furthermore, I have a doctor still on standby as a potential rebuttal witness who did examine Ms. Vander Ark. It's the report from the Forensic Center, which Mr. Johnson has, which essentially debunks this entire disassociation myth that she doesn't remember things or chooses not to remember things because of some disassociation. So I'm objecting to this entire line of questioning. It's an inappropriate, essentially, defense that's being raised here. It sounds like it's almost like a diminished capacity type defense, which we all know is not a valid defense. And I'm not on notice of any insanity defense or any doctor who would provide a diagnosis meaningful for the jury so they understand what these things actually are.
All right, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, sir. Initially, let me tell you what it's not. It's not an insanity defense. It is, and certainly my client can testify as to what she knows. Now, if the people are at liberty to examine her as to what she knows and how she might know that, and determine that her sources of information aren't adequate or that her understanding is inadequate. But certainly I can ask her what she knows and how what she knows corresponds to what's going on with her physically and mentally. Those do not rise to insanity defense. And certainly if she says, I don't remember, she can explain why. If she were a drunk and she said, I can't remember because I was drunk that night, we would allow that in. If she says, I can't remember because it's this association thing, then that should be allowable. It doesn't rise to a legal defense. It doesn't arise to a argument of insanity. What it does is an explanation simply of what she did next. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why don't you remember these things? That's what this explains. And quite frankly, that I think is relevant, and it's certainly I think permissible at this point. If the people have an expert that they can bring in and say, hey, look, that's not what's going on with this woman, that's their call. But to say she can't even talk about it because somebody else may disagree with her is not the standard. The standard here is the information relevant, and certainly did she act upon it? Certainly, and she's acting upon this information, and does it explain an issue for which the jury has to determine? They have to determine intention, and quite frankly, if she doesn't even remember the conduct that she's involved with, certainly that goes to show that she didn't make I would argue that shows that she didn't make an informed choice to do the things that happened in that household. But certainly she gets a chance to explain why it is I don't remember, because that's going to be her answer. I don't remember. And so she gets a chance to explain that. And that's all we're asking here. We're not going to argue that this is a defense. It's just simply an explanation for why she did what she did.
All right, Mr. Roberts.
Well, she can certainly answer she doesn't remember. Absolutely, she can answer that. What she can't do is testify about a diagnosis that she says that she's been provided by somebody and an explanation for what that diagnosis means. She's not a doctor. Anything that she learned to talk about disassociation was provided to her by hearsay. And that those individuals, if that is going to be the testimony and disassociation is the defense, then I want the doctor here that examined her and diagnosed her with having disassociation so she can conveniently forget the horrible things that happened in this case. It's all hearsay. It's not the same thing as intoxication.
So, Mr. Johnson, I think, you're going to ask her if she doesn't remember, assuming she's going to answer no. Well, why don't you not remember? She's going to say, well, because I have this dissociation disorder, right? I think you'd have to lay the foundation for that testimony. And the foundation for that testimony would be hearsay. would be from some other source. She's obviously not a doctor. She can't self-diagnose herself. She's not been admitted as an expert. So she can, as a layperson, testify to what she feels and those things rationally based upon her feelings and what she sees and understands. So I don't think it's an objectionable. She can say, I don't remember. Why don't you remember? Well, because, I black out. Now, your example was drunk driving. Well, a layperson can say, hey, listen, in my experience, when I drink 8 beers, I, stumble. I can't really remember, those kind of things. And it's rationally based on her perception. And she can describe those things that are happening to her. I think that's fair. But in order to say, yes, that is exactly dissociation disorder or this, there's got to be a foundation laid for that.
Yes, sir.
And she cannot lay that foundation. And if she's going to, again, that would be hearsay. Again, if a doctor comes in and says, we told her this, that lays the foundation, okay, fine. But I think Mr. Roberts is correct when he says that foundation has not been laid, which would then implicate him bringing in a doctor to say that's not true. So based on that, I am going to sustain the objection. Again, you can still ask her about what she felt, what she heard, what she saw, the symptoms she experienced. I don't think you're objecting to that, Mr. Roberts. Is that correct?
Well, symptoms makes me a little bit nervous. I guess we can address it on a
Okay.
answer by answer basis.
But if she says, hey, look, I felt heart palpitations, or I felt my blood pressure going up, or I felt,
Oh, certainly
Okay.
talking about physical impacts on your own body. Sure, anybody
Okay.
can testify to those things.
Right.
But tying it to any specific diagnosis is just inappropriate
Okay.
because there's no foundation as the court's indicated.
I agree. All
Thank
right. So
Oh,
objection is sustained.
You understand, we can't talk about disassociation. We can't use that term.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Secondly, Judge, and a few moments ago, I was given permission to approach my client. I whispered something in her ear. She was using Gabriel's name.
Yeah, Mr. John, I did hear. Mr. Roberts caught that too. Yeah. So no, I didn't say anything then, and I understand. We've been, practice. I've seen you in practice. You haven't actually practiced in front of me yet, but I certainly have seen you in action. So I think I trust that you're not doing anything nefarious. So,
Thank you.
all right. Anything else, Mr.
No.
Roberts?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's bring it back out. Please rise. All right, you may be seated. All right, you may continue, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Ms. Vander Ark, you've told the jury about how busy you are, and you told the jury that you have some physical things going on with you, correct?
Yes, sir.
How did those things impact you in terms of your ability to think clearly, organize, and follow through on information?
Starting right after my husband's stroke, I started experiencing episodes where if you've ever passed out, like the world closes, you get tunnel vision and the world closes in on you until you completely black out. It felt like I was blacking out, but I didn't actually pass out. And the events that happened after that, I have no idea of what happened. I don't remember it. I don't know.
Okay,
And this happened anytime I got even a little stressed. This
So-
happened.
so you're understanding, you're under oath right now, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're asked to tell the truth right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're asking you that you not guess at anything.
Correct.
Okay, do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
So it is, if you don't understand, we need to say you don't remember, we need to say those things.
Correct.
Okay. And you did testify that these symptoms and this pressure impacted your recollections. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And then there's the final pressure. You're raising children and teenage children, some of them in your home at the same
Yes.
time. So all these things are going on at once. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
While you're at work monitoring, and you've got the ability to monitor the home, Would your job permit you, did you have the ability to sit in front of a monitor and watch the home all the time? Or were there times that you could not do that?
Most of the time I couldn't do it
And why is that?
because I had work to do. Part of the time I was in court with my judge. And then most of the time I was doing research or doing other tasks that my judge or one of the other judges in the county assigned. So I didn't have time to do that.
When you're watching the videos on the phone, you said you watched them with your telephone screen, correct?
Correct.
And it is a standard screen, nothing special about
It was an iPhone, I think it was a 12.
Okay. I've seen those video cameras systems where you can have 4 different cameras going all at one time, all the same screen. Was that your situation, or did you move from camera to camera and only have that camera visible?
No, the cameras were different brands and different cameras, so you could only do one at a time.
Okay, all right. So, and were you wearing an iWatch as well?
An Apple Watch, yes.
Apple Watch, thank you. Were you able to monitor your children from the Apple Watch?
No.
Okay. So if you were, say, in a courtroom like this and you're doing your job, you got a message on your Apple Watch, what would you get?
You could get messages and pictures. You couldn't see it. I mean, the screen was tiny, but you could get messages, and then there's certain like pat responses, like pre-programmed responses, or you can type with your finger.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you about a specific email or text that you received that accompanied a picture. It's the one that the prosecutors given to the jury that shows Timothy from the chest up and then his legs. You know what I'm talking about?
I have heard about it. I have not actually seen these pictures.
When you respond to it, how's it count? Can that be?
I typed we were in court that day.
Uh-huh.
I actually think I responded. I'm in court. I scribbled out a message real quick back to
Okay.
Paul.
Okay, so did you see the photograph afterwards?
No, I had too many messages on my phone. I don't usually scroll back.
Okay, so how did you know to respond to Paul to say, give him some food?
Because of what he said. He had sent a message saying something.
Okay, so you were able to see the message.
Yes, I saw and the picture, I mean, it's this big, but there was pictures. I just couldn't see what it was of.
Okay. I deviated again. I tend to do that. Sorry about that. I need to be more organized, and we'll get there. We talked about the leg irons. We talked about the plastic ties. And did you purchase those plastic ties?
I don't remember, honestly.
Okay. What about the hot sauce? Tell this jury about hot sauce and your son Timothy. Well, I'm not going to tell you my understanding because you don't need to know that. The question is, whose idea was it to get hot sauce and to administer it to your son?
The idea was originally Paul's.
Okay. And what was the point of the hot sauce?
Because we had tried multiple other discipline methods, and he thought maybe that would get him to stop misbehaving.
Okay.
He suggested it to me, and I thought I was so wrung out, I was willing to try just about anything.
All right. Were you aware that this hot sauce was purchased online?
Yes.
Do you know why it was purchased online instead of going to Meijer and picking up a bottle of hot sauce?
Well, I didn't have time to go to the store. I mean, I did the grocery delivery through the Walmart app or through the Meijer app. And I didn't see anything. They just had basic stuff. And from our discussion, we had talked about something. And Timothy could handle this child. When I got pregnant.
I know you're going.
You're gonna,
But hold on a second.
okay.
I
Sorry.
want to make sure we understand this. This hot sauce has a particular label. I've never seen it at Meijer. Did you see the label? Did you see the hot sauce itself? Did you order it?
I believe I ordered at least one of the bottles, yes.
Okay. Why did you order this particular hot sauce or these particular hot sauces? What do they have in common?
Because I think it was the same brand, the same one. Because it was hotter than what you could usually get, and because Timothy he liked spicy food.
Okay.
He loved spicy food.
All right. How do you know you like spicy food?
That actually started before he was ever born. Before I got pregnant with Timothy, I didn't like spicy at all. I mean, nothing, no heat, nothing. When I got pregnant with him, I started craving, my ex liked spicy foods, but I didn't. And I started craving, like I would outspice my ex. It was amazing. I still like, I'm not to the extent when I was pregnant, but some of that remained. But Timothy, as early as age 2, he could eat a whole bag of the flaming hot Cheetos without a drink. I mean, just he could down. He loved spicy food. It
Okay.
used to scare the heck out of me.
But you're aware that these spices were hotter than what you needed
Yes.
at Meyer.
Yes.
And that it was for disciplinary issues, is that
Yes.
correct? Did you ever, the testimony was that you did childcare while Paul was at school or at work? Did you ever administer any of the hot sauce yourself?
If I remember, I might have done some on bread a couple of times.
Okay.
But usually by the time I got home, that either we were cooking food, I had to cook, or I had Paul cook something so I could feed everybody. But I don't recall, I think I did it on bread once or twice maybe, but that was it.
There's a text out there that says you suggested putting hot sauce on his penis. Do you remember hearing that?
I remember hearing it, yes.
Do you remember saying those things?
I do not know, sir.
Oh yeah, we talked about the ice baths. Some talk cold baths and sometimes they were called ice baths. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The source of the ice, according to the testimony I heard, was your home refrigerator.
No, it was actually a countertop ice maker. The refrigerator did not have an ice maker in it.
Okay, and you didn't go out and buy the 50-pound bags of ice for the home.
No, I did not.
How much ice are we talking about that tabletop ice maker can?
It actually made about 1.5 cups of ice. I had to measure it to use it for, I made some frappes at times.
Okay.
The basket was maybe this wide, and then underneath was the water, where the water was kept, because that's how it made the ice.
Okay.
And then it took about 2 hours to remake more ice.
Okay. All right. Okay. You admit getting frustrated with your child care efforts with Timothy, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Um,
Frustrated, discouraged.
Did you ever intend to hurt him?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You raised other children, correct?
Yes, I did.
And while Timmy was malnourished, to your knowledge, have any of your other children ever been reported as malnourished?
No, not at all.
As I looked at Paul, he seemed like a thin guy to me.
He is. We're all pretty small. Well,
Okay.
my oldest is a little bit thicker.
Okay. My question is this, was Timothy's, when he was healthy, was his build like his brothers, or was he built like his older brother who's a little heavier?
He went back and forth. He actually, there was a situation where he actually got on the bathroom scale it was after Mother's Day of 2022. I can tell you why I know it's after Mother's Day if you want me to.
No, that's not necessary.
Okay.
Unless you
But
ask.
I was training a new service dog, as has been discussed. It's a Great Dane puppy. He was 7 months old at the time, and he was too big to sit on the bathroom scale to get his weight. And I went in to see what he weighed. And Timothy, what we would do is somebody would stand on the scale, get your weight, and then you pick up the dog. And Timothy wanted to help out that day. So I thought the dog would be too big for him at that point. He was already really big at 7 months old. But I said, okay, let's try it. And so it was, like I said, sometime after Mother's Day. It wasn't very long after Mother's Day, but at the time he was 104. Timothy was. He could not pick up the dog because the dog was 102 at the time.
Okay. Part of this process of providing childcare,
Mhm.
somebody had to be the eyes in the house when you weren't there. Is that correct?
Yes,
You selected Paul for that purpose.
I didn't have a choice. That was my only option.
How much did you rely upon what Paul was telling you?
I totally relied on him.
Do you remember the during the reading of the transcripts, the text that you asked Paul? Matter of fact, let me. Be honest with me. Are you worried about him at all, or is it all a bunch of BS like it has been for days? Do you remember that? Do you remember that text?
Vaguely, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember his response?
I remember he said he wasn't worried about it.
Did you rely on that?
Yes, absolutely. He was the one. I was at home so few hours when the kids were awake, unfortunately.
And then you had to try to sleep yourself.
I tried, yes, sir.
And
They
You're-
slept better than I did.
let's face it, your house is a mess. It's a wreck.
Yes, sir.
Why was that?
I'm not a great person at keeping things clean, and having 3 boys, that contributed. I tried to get their help cleaning up as much as I could, but I just didn't have time or the energy with the lack of sleep and everything else going on. I barely functioned.
Okay. And that message well, strike that. Leave that. Did you depend, I asked you, did you depend on what Paul was telling you?
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, did Paul ever, for lack of a better term, sound the alarm?
Not that I was aware of, no, sir.
Okay. That one message, was
Just,
that it?
that was it. That's the only thing I got from Paul that ever had any concern.
With the one little pictures in it?
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay. And okay, let's talk about some other stuff here. Once you discovered that Timothy had passed, and once the police get there, do you tell them the truth?
I was so freaked out. I'm sorry. Honestly, I've got one. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome. Why didn't you tell them the truth? Why were you so freaked?
I don't remember what my line of thinking was at the time. I was so I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't.
Were you tired at that point?
I was exhausted. The night before he passed, I had less than an hour of sleep.
Were you frightened at that point?
Absolutely. I just lost my son.
You need a moment?
I'm okay.
Okay. Were you expecting? Was this outcome expected by you?
Absolutely not. No.
So would it be safe to say you were surprised?
I was shocked.
Were you in disbelief initially?
Yes, absolutely.
You've got there's an indication that it took you a while to call the police. In fact, you told Paul not to, according to Paul's testimony. Why did it take you so long? He said 18 minutes out. Why did it take you so long to call the police?
I have no idea, honestly. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. It was surreal. Like you don't even know what's going on. Time slowed down and I didn't know what was going on.
When was the first time you found out it took 18 minutes to call the police?
Was it yesterday or the day before? Yeah, it was within the last few days.
Okay.
That's the first time.
Do you remember who was testifying when you found out? It doesn't matter.
I think we discussed it at a meeting on Monday. Was it Monday? I think so.
Doesn't matter.
And I heard 14 minutes initially, and then the first time I heard 18 minutes was when Paul said it yesterday.
Do you remember how clear is your memory of your time and from the time you found Timothy and he had passed and to the time you finished talking to the police that day?
It's spotty.
Okay. The first officer said that you were distraught. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
He said that you were crying. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember telling the police that you pulled Timothy from his bunk bed when you found him in distress?
I remember saying something like that. Yes, sir.
Was that true?
No, sir.
Do you remember providing CPR for Timothy?
Yes, I do.
When did you stop that?
When the pro-med people walked down into the basement, I had asked them to take over and they didn't take over right away, but they said I had to leave the area.
Okay. Let's do the hard stuff here. Jury's seen pictures of Timothy. We've all seen pictures of Timothy at the time of his death. How could you not know he was that ill? How could you not know?
Honestly, I was barely functioning. I missed a lot. I hate it because I mean, I feel like a complete failure, but there was things that I just didn't see. There was a lot that I didn't see, unfortunately.
In those texts, you instruct Paul to make sure he's getting enough calories, correct?
Yes, sir. I did.
You had a restricted diet, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you instructed Paul to make sure he's getting calories.
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you rely on that?
Absolutely.
Paul says he called the police ultimately. Who called the police?
I called 911. It was on my phone. I'm sure you can pull the call and find out where it's from.
Did you intend to hurt Timothy?
No, never.
Did you know he was being hurt?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
The tactics that you use to first of all, the tactics that you use to discipline Timothy, did they seem extreme or outrageous to you at the time?
No.
Timothy remained in, you'll admit the bath was not warm on the day he died. It was a cold bath.
Correct, the day
Okay.
before.
It wasn't an ice bath though, correct?
I
Far as you
wasn't,
know.
from the text, it looks like he did, but that wasn't what was said to do.
Okay,
Paul chose to do the ice on his own, if you look at the text.
okay. So there's testimony that you remained in that tub for hours. Were you aware of that?
No, I didn't realize he was in the tub, no.
When you came home, you didn't realize he was in the tub?
I did, when I got home, I actually ran him a warm bath when I got home,
Okay. Where?
in the tub downstairs.
Okay, so once you found him in the tub, what did you, explain the drill what you're talking about.
Well, I had to get Paul to work, and then I came home, and my understanding at least was that when Paul had splashed water, he had splashed it on his face only. That's what I understood. So I didn't realize he was still there. And so when I got home, I was like, wait a second, what the? So I decided to go ahead and run a warm bath just to.
There's a bunch of stuff in there talk about make sure he doesn't sleep, make sure he doesn't sleep. What's that about?
There was a couple of situations where Timothy actually intentionally kept everybody in the house awake. He would intentionally set off the motion sensors. He would make noise. With the house being bi-level, you could hear a lot from the downstairs. But he intentionally kept everybody awake.
Okay,
And so that was, okay, if you're going to keep us awake, then you have to stay awake.
so here's my question. If he slept all day, what would he do all night?
Oh, he'd be up all night. You had to get him up no later than about 10 in the morning, or he was up all night long.
There's a door that has a dent in it that we saw an exhibit of. Okay. And you heard Paul testify that he did that.
Yes.
What is your recollection of that incident?
What I remember is I remember hearing Paul yell from his room, because his room was directly below the master bedroom. And then I pulled up I wasn't asleep. So I pulled up the main camera in the basement area, and I see Paul come out and kick that door. And I went to hit the button. He was screaming at Timothy while it happened. And I hit the two-way talk button on the camera and said, "Hey, what the heck? Go back to bed." And I actually had to physically go downstairs and get him away from the door and send him to bed.
Was in the text on occasion, Paul would have say things that suggest aggressions towards Timothy on occasion. Did you know any other circumstances other than what's in those situations in the text?
Oh, absolutely. He never displayed that towards my youngest. He never displayed that towards my husband when he was still at home, or myself. He would get aggressive when he was playing games. He would get really angry. He had some serious anger issues. And then when Timothy moved up, and Timothy did push his buttons some, but he never reacted well. I mean, he just overreacted to Timothy every time. He hardly ever reacted rationally to Timothy.
Okay. And so, other than what he was texting you, and other than what you could see when you weren't working at your job, you don't have firsthand information as to what's going on between Paul and Timothy. Is that correct?
No, I asked my little guy occasionally, but Timothy never told me anything that was going on.
Okay.
So I did. I mean, I asked just because if I had texted Paul and he seemed upset, then I would get home and, hey, is everything okay? And my little guy, honestly, I don't remember him ever saying that there was an issue. He said, yeah, Paul got mad, but that was it. He never said anything happened.
Okay. One moment. What was your intent when you would administer punishments to Timothy?
To get him to behave.
Was it ever your intent to harm him?
No, absolutely not. No, the locks on the fridge and freezer, they're actually, he scared the heck out of me after my husband's stroke. And that's what brought those two on.
Okay.
I can tell you what happened.
What was the incident? And then what was the incident that caused you to put locks on the fridge?
I had just purchased a 2-pound bag of frozen chicken nuggets and put it in the freezer. And overnight, I guess he got around the motion sensors. But the next day, it was a weekend. And the next day I went to, little man asked for some chicken nuggets. And I went to get them and the bag was empty in the freezer. And I was like, what? We hadn't touched it. And so I started asking, and at first Timothy lied to me. He said he didn't touch it. And then I went and checked with little man and with Paul, and nobody had touched so I went back because I had issues with both Paul and Timothy lying to me a lot. So I went back to Timothy. I said, nobody else has touched this. He said, I ate them. I said, okay, did you cook them? He said, no, he ate the whole 2-pound bag frozen,
Okay.
uncooked chicken.
All right. Were you concerned about his health and getting into and eating frozen food?
Yes, and he ate, there was a time where he ate uncooked bacon out of the fridge before the chicken nugget incident. He ate a whole pound of uncooked ground beef at one point. This was all after the stroke when there was less people to keep an eye on.
Did it occur to you he's doing those things because he's hungry? He's starving?
No, there was plenty of food. There was no issues. He never told me he was hungry at the time when these incidents happened.
Okay. So fast forward. You offer him 2 pizza rolls if he does a certain thing. And you say, I don't care if they're frozen when you give them to him. If you're concerned about him eating frozen food, why would you offer him 2 frozen pizza rolls?
Because the chicken was uncooked and it's dangerous. I had a panic attack when he did the chicken. It was terrifying. I broke down completely.
So the nuggets were uncooked chicken.
Yes, it's uncooked chicken. That could have killed him.
Okay.
It freaked me out.
But the pizza rolls were at least cooked.
Yes, that
Even
was
if they
just,
were
you
frozen.
reheated them.
Okay. He was, and I'll give you one more, he was rail thin. How did you not notice?
I wish I hadn't answered that. Part of it, he actually, from the time of the stroke, because my husband's stroke was January 3rd of 2022, so most of this was cold weather. Part of it was he wore big clothes, he wore hoodies. The clothes that were sent to him from his dad and stepmom, most of the pants didn't fit him well to begin with. And I had gotten him a couple of pairs of jeans, but I couldn't afford a lot. And he also, once the stroke happened, he got really reclusive. He didn't want, and I had to force him, for a while when he was doing his homeschooling, he would do it on his tablet. And then I found out I tried to lock the tablet down, but he was doing other stuff on his tablet when he was supposed to be doing schoolwork. So I started the curriculum that he was on. You could print the assignments and the questions. So I started printing that, and literally he'd be like, just stick it on the stairs. And he'd give me the other assignments. I would grade them and stick them and put them into the program. But he didn't want anything to do with me hardly at all.
Yeah, but when you put your arms around and hug your
He
son.
didn't want hugged. He was 15. He didn't want me.
And he was autistic, correct?
He was high functioning,
Okay,
but most of the autism came with like interactions with other people. He struggled there.
okay. So it wasn't, was it just you he didn't want touching, or was there anybody, he didn't want anybody else?
He didn't want Gabriel, sorry, he didn't want little man hugging him either.
Okay. What about Paul? Do you ever see?
They never offered to hug each other.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Roberts, how long do you anticipate your?
Oh, I'm thinking at least an hour and a half, Judge. So.
Okay, well, it's a little early before lunch. I think it's a natural time to take a break unless you prefer to start now,
No,
Mr.
actually,
Roberts.
there's an issue I think that I'd like to address first. It'll might cut a small chunk of that out, but it's going to be quite extensive. So I agree that it makes sense to break now and we can come back early.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break a little early for lunch. You'll be allowed to leave the jury room. You can go wherever you want for lunch. I'd ask you to please wear your badges to and from your vehicles. That way people know that you're a juror. Please don't talk to anybody. Please don't look at any social media, news reports, articles online. Again, same applies. We have to make sure we have an unbiased panel. We'll be back here. I'm going to have you back. We have some matters to attend to at 1 o'clock. I'll have you back here at 1:15, hopefully for a 1:30 start. So I'll have the attorneys back here at the same time. So thank you. We're taking a recess. So please rise.
Okay, this is the Shanda Vander Ark, Shanda Vander Ark case in Michigan.
All right, have you seen it? Reflect the jury in the jury room. Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
Thanks, Judge. I guess the only issue I would like some clarity or direction from the court on is this. I intend to ask Ms. Vander Ark questions, and this is tipping hand a little bit. I understand that, but I think it's necessary to get some clarity.
Sorry, I thought they were going on
intend to ask
break.
you some questions about why she didn't file any legal documentation to get custody of Timothy Ferguson.
Go on break. Okay, so they're going on break. Said they would be back maybe around 1 o'clock. Well, they had something to do at 1, so they might not be back until around 2. I thought what we could do is do some research on her. I will try to be back at 2 o'clock so that we can live stream her. But okay, Shannon, how do you spell her name? Shanda. There it is. Vander Ark. This will help us. This will help us get caught up.
On the docket tonight, folks, she's going to be the new public enemy #1 here on your front row seat to justice based upon the allegations. Obviously, they have to prove them beyond a reasonable doubt. This is Shanda Vander Ark, 43 years old, lived in Michigan with her 3 sons, was working as a law clerk until her arrest, now charged with the horrific murder of her special needs son. Judge Ashley has the details for you tonight.
Norton Shores, Michigan police respond to an emergency call at 4788 Marshall Road. There they find 15-year-old Timothy Ferguson dead inside the home.
If you do this job long enough, you're going to see a lot of things that are very disturbing, are disgusting.
According to police, Timothy had special needs. He was severely malnourished, and there was evidence of abuse.
It's clear that this wasn't the first time that our victim, this 15-year-old, had suffered the hands of neglect and abuse.
Timothy Ferguson's mother, Shanda Vander Ark, and his older brother, Paul, were arrested. Investigators described how they say Timothy's family members brutalized him.
As punishment, our 15-year-old was subject to ice baths, was subject to not being fed food other than bread or bread soaked in hot sauce.
A neighbor spoke off camera with local station WXMI about the family.
It seemed like she was just, she's really to herself a lot.
According to the neighbor, Vander Ark and her family had lived in Norton Shores for a couple of years.
She doesn't come out much. Kids don't come out often at all.
Investigators say Vander Ark moved to Michigan from Oklahoma, where she had been investigated by child welfare authorities.
Instead of having her parental rights terminated, she voluntarily left the house. And from what we can tell, that's where the case kind of ended.
2 weeks after her arrest, Shanda Vander Ark was in a Muskegon County courtroom facing homicide and child abuse charges. And in an unexpected twist, it turns out she was no stranger to the courtroom.
I know that the defendant was working as a law clerk for the Waco Circuit Court. My understanding is right up to the point that she was arrested.
Vander Ark pleaded not guilty and is being held without bond. At her hearing, her attorney hinted at a possible defense.
There is a potential with lack of memory in this case to the allegations.
Timothy's brother Paul is also charged with child abuse and is expected to testify against their mother.
All right, folks, this trial begins on Tuesday. Paul Ferguson, who is the older brother of the victim, the other son of Shanda Vander Ark, has a status hearing on January 23rd, but he's expected to be a key witness against his mother. There are text messages that really give you the flavor for what the allegations are here, and these are between Shanda and her son, not the son who's dead, but his older brother, who's also been charged here. Take a look. Vander Ark, this is Shanda, says, feel free to dump some cold water on him. I honestly don't care if you get a little rough with him. Do you honestly believe we should be worried? And then Ferguson replies, I don't know. I'm just tired of him being such a nuisance. Vander Ark, the mother to Ferguson, maybe force his mouth open and put some hot sauce in there, considering everything he's put us through. In another text, Vander Ark asked Paul Ferguson to pour hot sauce on Timothy's genitals as a form of punishment, but he did decline to do that. Unreal. Like I said, public enemy. Let's bring back in our think tank, Al Wunsch, Darnell Crossland, and Jennifer Brandt. Darnell, it looks like the older brother.
This is jaw-dropping, you guys. I'm sitting here and my jaw is dropped wide open. Ugh.
Will be the key witness here.
Women Radio, day 14 of LIVEmas. We're covering Shanda Vander Ark's trial. Ugh.
He's on the inside. He's charged. He's cooperating. How do you think that goes down?
Just these stories break my heart. And the whole time I was listening to it,
I will put the link to the rest of this news report in the comments. They have left for breakfast for lunch, and we'll be back about 2-ish. I'll try to do my live so I want to at least have her whole testimony on a live. So I will come back. I will watch for her to be back on the stand, and we'll come back and hopefully cover the rest of the day. If we don't cover it, then tomorrow, that'll be the case we work on. I know I put the Watts case up for today, but this is live, and I really want to at least have her testimony and talk about it. So this is Parawoman Radio. If you could give this live a thumbs up, it helps us dance out into the algorithm, bring more people back to the party. It's just a free way to help us out. They're going to be back about 2-ish, and so we will try to be back then too. Either way, I'm going to record it, and we'll talk about it. Okay? I love you guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye. Or later today, maybe. I don't know why I said tomorrow. Bye.